I'm Jeff Talley for the Legacy Series. Dr. Fred Woodford is with us of Purdue University, and the topic of this particular segment is Don't Leave It Behind. Now, this is not leaving a kid at school. This is about protecting crops, and our companies are hired to work for farmers in crop protection. And the employee that goes to those fields and serves that farmer is the professional. They didn't hire us to damage crops, they hired us to protect crops. And with the chemistry that we're using today, with the sprayers that we're using today, that means extra care and making sure that we're applying what we're supposed to, where we're supposed to, and when we're supposed to.
That's a lot of stuff that what we're supposed to do, Jeff, but this is what we're not supposed to do. So you talked about an applicator coming out, treating, getting paid to remove the weeds or whatever we're treating for from a grower's field, not to damage their fields. This causes us all kind of problems visually from the road. They want to know who sprayed this. It's much bigger than this one field. So if it's feed, seed, fertilizer, fuel, whatever if this farmer is upset enough, they leave, we lose a lot of business. The object is to kill the weeds, not the crop.
And the situation also is, just from being a farmer myself, it's right beside the road. So everyone sees it, so it's not just about the farmer. Now that story is amplified about who actually did the work.
And you know that's how it works.
Absolutely. So we're thinking about how we transition from one crop to the other, from one field to the other, and making sure the right product's in the right place. You've got some help for us.
You betcha. So what we're going to do is we're going to visit with Gary Cornell at the Asmark Training School, and we're going to do an overview of what it was like many years ago to now. But listen to this and see if there's not a key theme that all of these applicators are the same. As always, good to see you again, Gary. Gary, we're here at Asmark Applicator Training School, and now I understand you're the manager of this facility now.
I'm the training site manager. After about 43 years of custom application.
43 years? So you started with these machines in the 1970s?
Yes, but they look a lot different back then than they do now.
So if some of the folks, again, that's just starting, or in fact been in the business for 20 years, what did it look like back then?
Well, back in the 70s, we basically sprayed tall corn. That was most of our custom application. Our sprayers were three-wheelers, no cabs, no air conditioning. We could probably do, in a good day, 200 acres a day, which...
200?
Yeah, that's changed a lot since back then.
Well, 200 acres today, I probably wouldn't have a job. But Gary, the booms back then were what?
They were about 40 foot long. We always ran drops. There wasn't much of a clean out issue back then because we ran the same thing throughout the whole season.
So one of the changes outside, one of the major changes as we look at this equipment behind us, obviously we got cabs. They ride a whole lot easier, creature comforts, but we got the 20-foot booms. And I understand we're actually going to have some booms that are in the 130?
130, yes.
130 range coming out. We got more technology, but doesn't these applicators here basically still have the same components?
Yes, they do. Only there are a few differences, but most of them have a pump, and they have a screen after the pump, and they have the controller valves, and all of them have nozzles.
So in a way, they all look different. They're more sophisticated, a lot more expensive. We can do a lot more work, but the individual components amongst these three are pretty similar.
Pretty well the same, yep.
Yes. So tank clean out today is more important than it was maybe back in the 70s and 80s?
I believe that's true. Like I said, back then there was a lot fewer chemicals. As I stated with the high boys, we didn't change chemicals all year long. It was, 2,4-D, and that's what we sprayed.
And back then we were doing quarts, gallons.
It was pints, yeah, half a pint of 2,4-D. Yeah, that was pretty common.
Today we're down to what? We're down to third of an ounce?
Ounces, fractions of an ounce, yes.
So would that influence our tank clean out any when we got these products that are so active at very low rates.
That very well could be. Yes. Yeah.
In other words, this stuff that in the past we would not have seen, today
Right.
we would see with low residues.
That's true. Yes.
All right. So, to me, the theme on this one was a gentleman that's worked from the very beginning in the industry was uh, it's basically pumps, booms, filters, end caps, tanks, all of those things. No matter if you have a $500,000 sprayer, a $100,000 sprayer, or a $60,000 pull behind sprayer, makes no difference. All of these things still have the basic function, and that's what we're going to go tackle right now.
Attention to detail, and we're applying with GPS, we're applying with prescriptions, we're applying particular products to do specific things in the field. We can't be general when we're talking about cleaning out a sprayer, not just the tank, not just the hoses, not just the nozzles, the whole system.
Yes, but the problem is though, Jeff, all this technology drives what we do today. It's all technology driven, and sometimes we forget that it takes sweat, it takes some cleaning, has nothing to do with technology. It's starting with, getting rid of the materials on the spray tank. Here's an example of a screen that I pulled off at a field day that the guy had cleaned the sprayer. And I don't know about you, but it seemed like to me that if I've cleaned it, I'm not going to have this garbage in this screen.
That's not clean.
That's not clean. So that was a case where he didn't clean it. One of the ones that, as we look at where the residues are at, it's this area from the last nozzle to the tip, and we call that a dead area. And I don't know if you can see it.
So you clearly have the nozzle here, but if you look past this, of course I'm not with a tape measure, but I'm going to guess that there's 6 inches,
That's
probably
correct.
not a foot, but that's an area of pipe that there's not direct pressure on. It's an end cap that you easily could have residue that would lie.
And to show exactly what you're saying, we want to just use this industry video here. And if you notice on my right here, you can see that the spray, this blue would represent blue dye contaminant. So if you watch it, you can see it flushing out. And on the left side of me here, if you looked at that dead end area, that space that's got a cap on it, you can see that that stuff is just flowing in. Even when I open it up on the bottom, look how that is just setting in there.
It has no place to go. There's pressure working to this side of the inlet for the nozzle, and on this side there's no end.
Yes. Now, that's a fact. So just recently I did a field day, and you can see here where the guy brought his sprayer in, and I had to take the cap off there. And again, you can see that dead area. And I just took a little brush and I stuck it in there. You can see it's still kegged on the side, but look at how much I took out. It's incredible. Some of this stuff, you have enough material left to do acres of ground left in the system. That's why this is an area that we will have to look at when we go to cleaning the sprayer. Jeff, I don't know, hoses to you, they look black, they look solid.
What the hose looks like on the outside is not the important part so much as what it looks like on the inside. And that smooth rubber hose here, this is clearly a texture, and with the darkened areas, I can see there's some issues.
Yeah, and so this comes out of Mississippi State University. This is using high-powered scopes, and what they're trying to show us here is the holes that are in these hoses, brand new hoses, that these things are not perfect. And so a lot of the time, chemicals can be trapped in the hoses.
So not properly cleaning the hose tank structure
Yes,
is also something
that's
that
correct.
you've got to work
And
with.
so there's a whole list: tanks, screens, end caps, hoses. Screens, we have fewer and fewer people putting screens on their tips, but if I have screens, I still use it, then, again, they would have to be cleaned out as well.
From what I'm thinking, this is affecting the performance of the machine, but second of all, yes, this is residue. So I've got two different reasons to be paying attention here.
Actually, this whole thing is about multiple reasons why I'm focused on not damaging the next crop, but there's also, you talked about equipment running as efficiently as it can. This is something that I picked up recently, and I don't know if you can see
You got some
inside.
floaters. You got some floaters running here in this hose.
Yeah, that's floaters. That's a good way of saying it, Jeff. Now look at this one. This almost looks like we want to name them tablets. And can you tell what kind of gauge this is, or what kind of hose?
Plastic, clear.
Yeah, plastic clear, colored now.
Yeah, all right, colored, stained.
Stained, which means it needs to be replaced, but this is the sight gauge on a machine. So, if you ran another product into my tank, that water's going to fill through, and it obviously is gonna go up the tube, right?
Right.
But what happens if that's got solvent in it? If that has solvent in it that breaks this stuff down, and then you actually end up spraying it out on the wrong crop?
This is enough. This is enough with some material to cause damage.
Now, you had a good idea about how to fix this.
If it was mine, I'd put a T here with a cap or a valve that would allow me to drain that when I finish, but that's just me.
That's, actually, it's a good suggestion when I called some engineers and application specialists, because I had not seen this before. I didn't even think to look.
Right.
Now I know it's another possibility that I have to look at when I'm
This would be
cleaning.
a pain to take this pipe off that barb and then expect it to seal again. So if you had a T at the bottom,
You've solved that problem.
you've solved that problem.
Yes. So Jeff, we now know it's tanks, hoses, booms, nozzles, filters, end caps, all of this list of stuff. So here is a proposed clean out, and we'll give some reason and why. So empty the boom every night. The idea is to try to keep it from soaking in the hoses.
Okay, so I'm in this field with this farmer and this crop, and tomorrow I'm going over there for this farmer and this field and that crop, and it's the same thing.
Okay?
So, do I need to do this?
No, good point. So what we're talking about is going from crop to crop. So we have some that are grass herbicides, we have some that are broadleaf herbicides. So if you went grass herbicide that was on soybeans, you could damage the beans, you could damage the corn. So it's typically when we go from corn, beans, tomatoes, wheat, that we're looking at what we've used and to do a clean out in between crops. This is why the industry is doing a much better job of keeping the machines running on field, soybeans, corn, wheat, what have you, and not going back and forth, because that takes time to clean.
So a lot of things to look at to not leave it behind.
Yes? And so, and that's the whole point. So if you're going to see empty at night, first rinse in the field, we'll explain why. Before I do a second rinse, I'm going to clean my screens, do the end caps. I'm going to do a second rinse with water, add a tank cleaner, and maybe do an additional rinse to get rid of the tank cleaner. Some people want to do that. But let's put some photographs to this, and so we can have a discussion. So I'm done with that field that you talked about, and I'm fixing to go to Farmer Jones, and Farmer Jones has got a crop that I would be worried about dinging with my leftover residue. So I've got some 120-foot boom. Can you see how many gallons are left in that boom?
35 gallons at a 120-foot boom. So if I empty the tank, that's one thing, but I still got a pressurized
Oh, you
line.
betcha. So if I'm in your field and going to Farmer Jones's field, then I have an issue, because this is field rate. This is not residue, this is field application rates. That's roughly what, 35 gallons, couple of acres, depending on 2.5 acres, depending on what you're doing, rates per acre. So that's all, as I said, that's a lot of damage waiting to happen. And we still get a lot of this. We get a lot of this damage from people not blowing out their boom, getting rid of the materials in their booms.
And this is actually a product that fits this line that should go back onto the field that you were spraying.
That's correct.
Or at least to make sure to buffer it to moving on to another crop.
Let's make a clear point now. We'll do it a couple of times, I'm sure, Jeff. This in here is field rate material. It is not residue. This can't be dumped, can't be sprayed out. It's got to go back onto a field that this thing is labeled for. That's by federal, state law, by any state. That's a fact.
Okay.
So we have this stuff in the boom. So we have a few people. It comes with the equipment too. We have. I just picked up a farmer who's actually modified each section with a little switch, and he's got it plumbed to air. So what he's doing is blowing out what's in the boom to move that material out. This happens to be an air tank.
So this is a rinse out, and here in this case, we're using air and blowing it from. Doesn't replace the rinse,
There.
but it's one more element.
I thought I had you there, Jeff.
No, not this time.
So it's not, all it's doing is moving the materials. It's not part of the rinse. It's not your first rinse, is we're going to do with water.
Right.
So if you looked in the tank, Jeff, if you have material left in the tank, let's say 20, 30, 40, 50 gallons, and you just pump in clean water.
Yeah, that's the way I'm gonna do it. I'll just mix some water with it, and then I can rinse out. I'll be okay, right?
Well, you'll rinse out, but you just made more of a soup of this stuff and created more rinsate. So the best thing to do is to actually empty out your tank if you're really concerned about it. Empty out your tank so that when we start putting water in here, I'm not diluting my clean water with all of this material. I'm going to begin to get it off the side of the tanks.
Empty the tank, empty the line, then replace it with water.
There you go.
For rinse.
There you
First
go.
rinse.
First rinse. So here is my first rinse on an empty tank. And what I was just trying to show here, if you saw how cloudy the other one was, Jeff, that this one is nowhere near as cloudy. I expect a little cloudiness because I'm washing it off the tank. I'm circulating it in the pump. It's going round and round. And when I've done that for a few minutes, then I'm going to send it out. And that's what's going to push out what's in the booms.
Right.
Okay? Now, people often ask, Jeff, well, how much water do I need? Well, for me, it's an easy question, not how much, is can it pass the eye test? So as I'm running water through the boom, through the tank, first rinse still, what I want to make sure is that I have a clean rinse when what's coming out of the nozzle looks clean. So here you can, we put some materials in so we could see the white, and would that be clean to you?
If I'm blowing white, no.
No, it just, and this happens to be milk, so, but
Okay.
if it was chemistry that I could see, then obviously, then I need to keep adding water
So
till I get it.
this is milk.
This is milk.
In just a few minutes, you would have a herd of cats here
So,
trying to get
well, we could.
So,
But it has to pass the eye test, so it's not a question of how much is coming out of the nozzle, is it clean? We want to open up all the valves that we can to try to move this first rinse through if we can. There's all kind of places here, and again, every equipment has got these sort of secret places that we have to move water through. Now, Jeff, this was from last year, and it was interesting to me because I never thought stainless steel could do this. So I asked a farmer at a field day, I said, don't clean your machine, but I might as well tell him to clean it because he cleaned it. I said, dadgummit. So I climbed up on the tank to look in, I don't know, just to see what was happening, and I looked into his tank. And can you see the buildup on this inside of the stainless steel?
this is stainless, which means it won't stain, but it will stain less than others. But this is stainless steel, and this is residue on stainless
Yes,
steel.
600-something gallons flowed over this. Now, this is going to open up a new avenue for me here in a couple minutes. But if you do a first rinse, you need to look in your tank to make sure that it's off, because what will take this off is some solvents. When you put in a glyphosate, loaded glyphosate products, soaps, and those kind of things, it will eat this off. And this is not where you want it to be eaten off on the wrong crop.
I'm also concerned about this from a performance standpoint. If this stuff is sloughing off in the application and getting in filters or getting in screens and
Yes.
affecting the performance, I've got two separate issues, multiple reasons to take care of situations like this.
So this brings up another area, has to do with chemical compatibility. And so that's a different topic, but that's exactly what you said, looking at performance. So look in the tank. So we have a first rinse, we're done.
Okay.
In the tank, through the lines, out the booms. We have moved most of the material now out, and it went out into the field.
Right.
Now, Jeff, we have still hidden places, right? All we've done is what? The tank, the lines, and the booms. Where would be the heaviest places we would have residue?
There's a number of places that are left. You could find it in the filters.
Yep.
You could find it perhaps in screens, and certainly those ends that we talked about.
That's correct. So now, because that's the bulk of what's left, before I do a second rinse, I want to get rid of, clean out those areas that you just described.
Those are higher concentrations
correct.
we want to get rid of.
That's correct. And you saw that yellow that we started with? I mean, that's just a paste. So the question is, you expect me to pull every one of my screens off? Yeah. He said, look at this.
Would it be easier to take the time to clean the screens than face the farmer for the crop you damaged?
That's correct. Because when you go out to face the farmer and they're upset because you've injured their crop, oh, you're going to sit there and get a tongue lashing. I mean, and there's not much you can do or say at that point. However, I didn't buy this piece of equipment. Somebody did. So yes, this is a lot of screens. So what I'd like to see when we're really out there busting, and when the weather's fine, Jeff, and we have a break and we can make time. We're going to work late that night. Is to take all of these screens out and actually throw them in a 5-gallon bucket, and then put in another set of screens that's already pre-cleaned, so I can keep moving, because obviously when the weather is right, I've got to keep moving.
So on one side, you would say, I'm too big a hurry to take time to do that.
Yes.
On the other side, I can't afford not to. But a second set of screens for that applicator would save you time and also allow you to be safe.
That's correct. So that's one way of solving the problem when time. Time is what we're fighting here. So you'll see what people do here.
People, John, will think that if I do that, that I'm actually cleaning out the screen. And if you think about it, that screen is on the inside, but all that's doing, if you really wanted to look at it, if we can do that, it's actually just cleaning out on the inside of it. There is no way that that's going to clean this screen.
Nope.
No way.
Nope.
That screen has got to come out. It's got to be clean. That's just going to get rid of some large chunks, but that's about all. It's not going through the screen.
Correct.
And Jeff, if you think about it, we have run maybe tens of thousands of gallons through those screens. I mean, that's what the screen's for, and that stuff's still stuck in there. So just running more water like this, what this gentleman here is doing, is not going to help matters. What you have to often do, depending on the product, you can see the buildup here. Again, it's another buildup that we saw in the stainless tank. Now you can see this here. It's like the water is not even doing anything. It's almost like a paste.
So you had a residue that could have been in the filter or in the material, in the screen material.
That's correct.
But now we also have to pay attention to the canister.
That's correct.
That where this accumulated on the screen, it now is adhered to the outer part of the canister, and that's residue.
That is residues, and all this contributes to residue coming out and putting it in the wrong place. So what we're telling people to do is to take those screens. Some people use a tank cleaner for this as well, or hot water, or water, period. And if you can notice here, we've got a hose there with a pressure gun, and all I'm going to do is clean the hoses by forcing it up close to push it out. You would think that all those tens of thousands of gallons would have pushed it out, but it's not. It's still stuck in there. Now, so we got the screens, Jeff. Got all the screens done. They're clean. The canisters are clean. So now let's go back to one of my favorite areas to clean is the dead area. Okay, and again we saw that yellow earlier on, and it's nothing unusual. So what you want to do is take a brush, and you want to try to take that brush and pound it beyond right there.
We're not just concerned about the liquid that's here. We want to look and see if there's not some sort of a residue that has as well accumulated on the pipe.
Yes. Now, in my way, and again, this is we used a food dye on this one here to get that purple color. But if you look in that purple color, can you see those chunks in there floating?
Yes.
And that's only from what I just used right there. I think that whole inside of that pipe has got this stuff on it, like the stainless, like the canister, and it's lining that, and that water is just flowing right over it. It's not taking it off. Now, we'll fix that. There's a solution to that. Some people are taking high pressure again and trying to blow that stuff out. Some are using hot water. But whatever, we're going to do a second rinse. Now watch what happens. First rinse is done. We're going to do a second rinse. It's going to redo the tank, second time, to the pump, circulate it, push it out. It's going to go now through clean screens and cleaned end caps, out the boom, out the nozzles. So everything's just about getting a second round. And if you notice that on this second round, that the water is always cleaner because I've got the majority of it out of the tank and the pump.
Had you not cleared those screens, had you not cleared the end caps, had you not done the outer, that water wouldn't be that clear.
It depends how the system's set up. So those are beyond the pump. So lots of times we'll circulate from the pump to the tank and then push it out. All right. Now, 100% of the time, Jeff, and this goes back to that stainless tank, the canister, and all of this residue that seems like a paste that just forms and the water just runs over it. So we now have people that are taking those end caps off and they're blowing out the section under high pressure. 100% of the time, and I've asked this at many field days to people who do it, you will see about 3 or 4 seconds, 2, 3, 4 seconds, discolored water. The only one place left is it's on those pipes. It has to be. So we'd like to see people, as they're doing that second rinse and they're blowing the stuff out, is to take the time to blow out these sections. It doesn't take long, 4 or 5 seconds, and then you move on to the next one. There won't be anything here too exciting, but what I'm talking about here is this metal section, and that is just doing that to it. Now this one here, the time before, because we were on a rotating basis at a field day, it shot green out. That first group got to see this green colored stuff for about 3 seconds. Now it's clean, but that first one, it's stuck in here somewhere. All right. Now, so Jeff, what's the problem with having the way that these things are set up? I mean, what's the problem with this, if you notice that this dead end is up against this piece of metal.
You're gonna have a really hard time taking
That's
that
correct.
cap off without taking that, whatever this is,
So,
out of the way.
Yeah, so what's the issue with any of these? They're hard to pull off. So if they're real difficult to do, might that be somewhere we would skip?
Certainly,
Well, sure.
especially if I'm in a hurry.
If I'm in a hurry, and this is when we start cutting corners, this happens, you can see here the residue that's up on this cap on the end. You can see how they're over-engineered, and it goes on and on. So in the old days where we had these dead areas, now people are trying to fix those and go back. New equipment's doing away with those dead areas, but we still got thousands of machines out there. So let's look at some of the fixes to making it easier so I don't have to cut corners.
Kirk, so we were talking about looking at these end caps, and so and that these end caps are dead space.
Correct.
And so what we've done here is, I think, what did you guys do to put these pieces here on? Because I know I don't see that dead area on this one.
No, we eliminated the dead area by taking the pipe section itself off, and they make a kit, and we bought the kit to where we can cut this pipe to eliminate all that dead space, to where when you've got these on the end of your boom, the only thing that you have now is where the product ends up.
Okay.
And it comes out your nozzle, and it has no chance to build up.
So is it going to fit? Is this behind these nozzles? Is that how it's going to fit like
Correct.
that? Okay.
Correct.
And so my understanding was when you cut every section. So every section you made 2 cuts to re-rig this outfit.
Correct.
Roughly how much dead area did you cut out?
Roughly about 10 foot of dead pipe.
That's incredible. That's 10 feet that we're not getting very much mixture in.
All right, so what we saw here, that we had 10 feet of dead pipe. And what he did was, he just replaced that dead end with one of these adapters that he could stick his nozzles up. That's all we did there.
10 feet
Yes.
of field rate material that's left that you can eliminate by reducing those end caps.
That's correct. By reducing that dead end, he had 10 feet, which is, I don't know, that just seemed like a lot to me. And that's 10 feet of materials that's stacking up inside of it.
Okay.
Another option, which a lot of people are going to, it's a lot less expensive, are these Banjo valves. And if you have any Banjos on your equipment?
Absolutely, makes it
It's-
easier to clean.
It makes it easier to clean. Then I can open it up, I can clean it, I can pressure it, I can do lots of things with it, right? To be
Of course, one of my concerns too is what happens if the levers are pulled and then I lose a cap. They've solved that with new
They have
technology.
solved it, because we used to have tie clamps on it. So if you notice on my left there, or on your left, you can see the red dots. So in order for this cap here to open, something would have to hit both at the same time, and so that's not gonna happen. So what they've done is, again, this is a simple technology that keeps that on it. I don't have to worry about that zip tie being on.
So much of this, I want to think of when the off season is coming up here. if there is such a thing as an off-season, about maybe retooling and taking a look at the machine itself of what are the things that I can do to replumb or change about so that it is easier to clean and prevent these residues.
Yes, it costs us money up front, but it saves us, time on the end when we're busy, and it keeps us from having problems in the field with growers. So, you know, you have to be the judge of whether those are good values for it. It seemed like to me this is an easy fix. And then the last one that a lot of the new machines are actually going to are these quarter turn valves. And you can see here where you can actually just flush it in. We did one down in Kentucky not too long ago, and there we opened up that one section with that red. I mean, under pressure, you could see the color come out of the sprayer, out of that section, and it would shoot a long way. It's tremendous pressure. And this, again, is just showing you an easy way on that second rinse, which is turning a cap. And I can go down the line and be able to do that very quickly. So, Jeff, we got it all, haven't we? We got the first rinse, got it out of the boom, basically. The second rinse, we have done screens and end caps, booms, all repeated again. So, why use a tank cleaner?
There may still be something there.
Yes. Now, it should not be chunks of stuff. It should be pieces, particles. All right? So now we're going to use a commercial tank cleaner. Now, this is, I don't know how else to say it, but we think these tank cleaners do a lot more, a lot quicker than they actually do. So when I ask people, Jeff, well, how long do you leave your tank cleaner in?
I would have said 10, 15 minutes, maybe 30, you know?
There's never a 30. It's always 15 minutes. If the stuff was that good, Jeff, I wouldn't go through all that. I would just use tank cleaner and put the tank cleaner in and move on. Now, I put this up here to make my point. So I would say, well, where'd you come up with 15 minutes? That's industry standard. And they said, well, it's on the label. It's not on the label. You didn't read the label.
There's too many lawyers to have that on the label.
That's correct. And you got it. In fact, if you read it, and they're all the same, this process can take as little as a few minutes to as long as a day, depending on the deposit. Since it's impossible to know how long to wait, a person must use their best judgment. What are they just telling you? This is lawyers writing for lawyers. So you brought up the lawyer part. What are they just telling you here?
It's on you.
It's on you. Since this is not 100% certain, which I guess is your judgment,
Right.
then what they want you to do, you have to determine. See the word you?
Yes.
That's you determine which 100% that it's safe to use. So they want you to put in their tank rinse, the tank cleaner, keep it in whatever you think, spray it out, and wait till you see damage. Well, that might take me a week. But that's what we agreed to when we buy these products. These tank cleaners cannot take what you saw in that filter, that white, just the powders, the residue, the yellow on the stick. It can't break all that down in 15 minutes. So what you and I are doing here is getting rid of the majority of it, and now we're chasing small drops, small pieces, small everything.
I've learned from the process, and even in my own clean out, that instead of, with whatever's left
Yes.
of that fill rate material, instead of just adding water to that, my first mode is to get rid of the fill volume. Empty the tank, empty the boom of the first rate.
Yes.
And then rinse.
So
I'm going in every process, and every step that we've moved here
Yep.
is to continue to reduce, continue to eliminate opportunity. I took the fill rate stuff out, I emptied the caps, I emptied the screens. Then I went to a rinse. And every step of the process, I'm moving as much of the volatile material out as I can. And finally, with this cleaner, now I'm going that extra mile.
You're going the extra mile. And again, we can never clean a tank 100%, but we can clean it to where it doesn't show symptoms on plants. And that's the object, symptoms on plants. So we're going to use the tank cleaner, leave it in as long as we can. If I can leave it overnight, which some of the growers can, then it allows the tank cleaner, the soaps, the surfactants in the tank cleaner to go into the hoses and pull the stuff out and then put it and break it down with the caustic materials in the tank. Some people add a fork rinse to get rid of the tank cleaner. I have never seen tank cleaner damage, but maybe people listening to this may have seen that damage.
Again, depends on the crop that you're going into
Yes.
from one place to the
Yes.
other. Now, I remember back in the day that we had plastic jugs and containers, and they said, you got to triple rinse. Be sure you triple rinse. Triple rinse.
Yeah, we 20 years worth of education to tell somebody to rinse these containers. And if you remember, we said when you empty it out, is to make sure that you get everything out before you start the rinsing, which is what we just did with the tank.
Exactly.
Now, then we're going to add the water to it to be able to get rid of what's in the jug, the can, or whatever. Now, what I wanted to show you that this worked, we all know that the dicamba plays heck on soybeans that don't have the traits.
This is a huge issue.
Across the country, our Midwest, East Coast. Now, let me show you what we did. We took a dicamba product, we mixed it up at field rate, and we sprayed it on dicamba traded seed.
According to the label, you did your job.
Everything's fine.
Okay?
Now, I took my first rinse, and if you remember, that's flushing out the boom, and I sprayed it on beans that did not have the trait.
Okay.
So you would expect that's a field rate on those beans. I killed them, I stunted them, I basically destroyed them.
With only a single rinse, you
That's
destroyed a
That's
crop
correct.
that was not meant for the chemistry.
That's correct. Now, I took the second rinse off the same machine, didn't do anything else, but rinsed it, collected my water, and we sprayed it on those same beans without the trait. This time we didn't kill it. This time we didn't stun it, but what we did was we did cup the beans.
There's some cupping.
Which is what we're seeing, across the Midwest now. It's just cupping. I took that third rinse off the same machine, did nothing else, just took the third rinse and sprayed it over the beans that were susceptible to it. And basically what I did was watered the plants. No symptoms, no problems. The triple rinsing still works. It's a dilution factor, right? That's what you just said. So doing this process, Jeff, we can do this. It's just a question of having to take the time. You remember the old commercial, you can pay me now or pay me later?
Right.
This fits right in here with what we're talking about.
So the old school technology of triple rinse still applies today, even with the most, what some would say, volatile material, the one that's drawing the most attention. Some common sense
Yes.
with regard of cleaning. Now, this doesn't take into account those that are coming by spray drift or wind or other things,
Sure.
or volatility. But from a clean out standpoint, it can be done.
And what I'm offering you here is not something that's from let's say a research or university perspective that I got all day to do it. This is just common practices that we do, and we can make it work. Now, Jeff, one of the things that we can't answer here, one part we can, is people say, what do I do with the rinsing? Well, I know that first rinse has got to go to the field. And remember, we talked about what's charged in those booms is field rate application.
The field rate needs to go to the field.
There's no doubt. That's 100% certain based on federal law. Every state has got to go back out into the fields that it's labeled for.
Now we're talking about the rinse.
That's right. The second and third rinse, which is going to have a whole lot less in them, as you saw the water was cleaner, what we do with that depends on the state's laws, regulations, and policies.
So very important that if you're an applicator for a company and you're operating in multiple states, make sure you understand the rules for each one of those states.
That's correct. So in some states will allow this application of second and third rinse here, as long as it did not get into water. That I also can tell you from state, federal, and every state, the stuff can't get into water. So the question is, would it be allowed in your state to make that second, third rinse on that field edge?
Probably not a waterway and probably not the edge of a ditch. Find a place that is not
There.
a nexus to a flowing water.
There you go. But again, we need to ask the state that. So Jeff, if let's maybe start right here on my left there. Follow the procedures to whatever procedures you've got written down. As applicators, we're not paid to cut corners. We're the representative of the field, of the company to that farmer. So don't cut corners. If you're going to have to cut corners, make sure it's the manager that tells you to cut the corners.
But they're not going to do that.
They're
We know
not
that
going to
out there.
do that. That's right. So if you understand what we did, as you said, dilution, empty the boom every night, do the first rinse in the field. That's that field rate stuff. take our screens and our end caps and handle them properly. So at that point, when I'm doing my second rinse, I've gotten most of the stuff out of it. I'm going to add my tank cleaner at the end because I'm going to be working on smaller pieces, third rinse and flush and move on.
So the object of this particular exercise has been about don't leave it behind. I'm going to take a step and suggest that some of this begins with attitude of how do I see myself? Am I just a spray applicator, or am I a crop protection professional? How do I see myself? How would I want my doctor? How would I want the people who prepare my food? How would I want them to serve me? How do I want to provide service for the farmers who are counting on me for the value of crops that we have, and certainly for the longevity of my company? It starts with attitude, and it starts with making sure those procedures are checked off so we don't leave it behind.
That's correct, and that's the whole point, because we have a customer. Here is our customer. Here is the applicator. I would rather be talking to my grower on things that he desires to purchase from me, or to offer him information about what he's seeing, or to have that conversation about what I can do for him. To go out there when you got a complaint is just, again, all you can do is hang your head down and say, yeah, we did it, and get a tongue lashing. So, you know, we can either do it now, or we can spend the time right here just getting chewed out for damage in a crop. And as you said, you know, it's up to us to make that effort.
Dr. Fred Woodford with Purdue University. This is the Legacy Series. Don't leave it behind.